We're now joined by Matt Tait. Wave the wheat. Matt's been on with us many times, a lot of times with men's basketball with Bill Self, but many times football with what Lance Leipold has with the football team, getting a lot of respect early on, and they've kind of earned it. Matt, thanks for your time. Craig Smoke and David Smoke. Kansas has not had these kind of expectations in football in a long, long time. Is that something that, because of how Lance Leipold handles the system and culture, won't be an issue?
Yeah, I really don't think so. Couple of reasons. One, these guys don't feel like they've done anything yet. I mean, they got their bowl rings last week, and that was cool. Certainly a newsworthy, noteworthy moment in Kansas football history. But even that, they kind of looked at them, checked them out, put them on the shelf, and they've just found a way to stay hungry. The year before when they lost to Arkansas, after finally ending that bowl drought and getting back to a bowl game, it was the same thing. It was like, we're not celebrating. We got there, but we lost. We had a sub 500 record. Like we believe we can do better, and we expect to do better. And so, that's the culture, that's the expectation, that's the way they operate. And really it has been, especially for this senior class, since day one. I mean, even as freshmen, when a lot of them weren't playing a lot of them were watching, teammates on the field struggle. That was in the Les Miles era. They didn't win games. There's been a lot of stories, Luke Grimm, Jalon Daniels, guys like that who are big parts of this team, kind of reflecting back on, we were watching that and we were like, this isn't going to be us, So their goal is still way out there as far as what their big picture is and everything like that. So they're still chasing it. They're still hunting. By no means do they feel like, hey, we've arrived, we can just kind of cruise now. No, they know they in a very big way, a very real way, they haven't done anything yet. So I think that's a great attitude to have, and that's certainly a reflection of the culture and the leadership and the coaching staff, but also of the players.
Matt, how much of a question is there still about Jaylen Daniels' health? I mean, from the outside looking in, there's that big caveat that, like, hey, if Jaylen Daniels is healthy, they could be special. But how much of a question mark is his health still at this point?
I think it's a huge question mark until it isn't,
Yeah.
And unfortunately for him, this is back-to-back seasons now where an injury, a different injury, ended his season. And so, yeah, I think he's probably tired of hearing that. I think he's, I think he thinks he's fine, and he thinks that he's going to be fine, and the injuries are just sort of bad luck, fluky things. But again, if it tends to happen to you on a regular basis, it's only right for people to question it and that to continue to be part of your story. So, yeah, I think we have to see it, and I don't go as far as to make a prediction on whether we will. I would have predicted last year that he'd be totally fine. Because their off season between the two bowl games was spent, the strength coach gave some great quotes about changing the way they approach it in the off season with him to try to make him bulletproof and all these things. And it was an awesome visual and image and a great story. And then he got hurt, so I think everybody's sort of, cautiously optimistic that this will be the year that he does stay healthy. And, understandably so. It's the right thing for people to point to on the outside. If he's not healthy, they have a big question at the position. There's talent there, but he's dynamic. He's a difference maker, and he always has been. So, if he's not in there, the question becomes much, much bigger. If he is in there, then all these expectations, all this talk about challenging for a Big 12 title and possibly, with the expansion of the playoff, maybe even making a run at that. I mean, all those things are legit if he's healthy and he's their quarterback. But, until we see it, you do have to kind of keep that in there as sort of the but or if this happens, then this. So it sucks for him. It does. I know he's tired of hearing about it, but, the easiest way to put it to rest is go out there and play 12, 13 games and do what you do, and everybody will stop talking about it then.
And so just for clarity, there's the question of if he can stay healthy, but is the feeling at least that he is healthy now, or is that still somewhat of a question?
I think that, they liked what he did in the spring.
Okay.
They were pretty comfortable with the progress that he made, not just in terms of, with the offense, because, they do have a new offensive coordinator too. That's significant, right? And so this might have been a bigger spring for him than any of the others because the continuity was there with your old OC, and now you got a new guy coming in. He's not changing everything. He's you guys know him. Grimes is no fool. He came up here and he saw what he has and he liked it, and so let's just tweak here and there. But overall, we're going to do a lot of the same stuff. But still, it's different. It's a different voice. It's a different presence, and so that was an important part of it. But from day one of spring all the way through the end, we didn't get to talk to him. But at the same time, that the updates we got were we like how he's progressing. He's doing everything he needs to be doing. He's throwing. We saw it in the sort of spring showcase. It wasn't a real spring game, but he was out there for a series or two, and he threw the ball just fine. So I think, yeah, you're always worried about it when that's the situation in the past. But I think they're pretty happy with where he's at. They just hope he can keep moving in the right direction.
They had a great backup situation. Jason Bean could start for a lot of people, but he's gone. So you have a lot of younger quarterbacks, freshmen, sophomores, inexperience. What's next then if Jalon Daniels even has to miss a series because he maybe jammed a finger?
Yeah, no question. Cole Ballard is he's a great story. I mean, he came to KU as a walk-on. He ended up being Bean's backup last year because Jalon was hurt, and it mattered. He had to go in and play the Texas Tech game, and Bean got hurt in the first quarter, and Cole did a great job as a true freshman who was not that far removed from high school football. He's got talent. He's got moxie. He's confident. He's grown a lot physically and mentally. But he also came in with a mental edge that was different than most freshmen. His dad's the GM of the Colts, so he's been around it. Chris Ballard, he's been around it. And I think that puts him on a different plane than a lot of true freshman quarterbacks because he's seen it at the NFL level. He's been around those guys. He's been in locker rooms. And, you just pick things up. Even if you're not actively trying to, you do. You just pick things up when that's your environment. And so he did a great job filling in. Bean missed the rest of that Tech game. And then Cole had to start against K-State. And, the reason they lost to K-State had nothing to do with Cole Ballard. I mean, I think he did throw a pick or two, but he played really, really well enough for them to win. So as much as that's very, very limited experience, it's probably enough to where if something did happen, you'd feel fairly confident saying this kid's ready because he was ready last year, and you wouldn't have expected that. After that, though, they've got a really good freshman, Isaiah Marshall, out of the Detroit area, phenomenal talent. A lot like Jalon Daniels, really confident, a playmaker with his arm and his legs, mature beyond his years. I mean, you look at the future of that position and with those two guys, and then they continue to recruit the position too, because, as you improve, as you start to win more games and get a little more recognition, the interest from around the country grows, and people that wouldn't have even given you the time of day, 4 or 5 star kids, they see that Kansas is a player, is a contender, and all of a sudden now you're recruiting that pool instead of what you had been. So they're still adding pieces. They're still adding quarterbacks, still looking at that position. I think everywhere does every year. But those two are more solid than they would appear to be on paper. That's for sure. But yeah, if Jalon goes down or can't play, you're putting it in some pretty green hands there. But I think they'd figure out a way to make it work because both of those kids are highly intelligent, team first guys that just don't seem to be fazed by anything.
Matt, what is your biggest question mark that still revolves around this team? I mean, rosters are still – there's trickling in of guys here and there, obviously. But beyond that, you kind of have a 99% picture, I think, across the country of what teams will look like. So for Kansas, what's still – do you feel like the question mark for them or the missing piece?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think it's the defensive line. They've got names. They've got players. They've got guys who have been out there. But, 2 years ago they had a guy named Lonnie Phelps, who's, I think, with the Cleveland Browns now, led them in sacks, was a transfer portal guy, came in and just exploded and was phenomenal. Last year, same thing, man. Austin Booker. I think Austin Booker might have led the Big 12 in sacks. And he was a draft pick of the Bears this spring. So, you're looking to replace those two guys. Phelps was gone last year, but it's one right after the next. And I think there's a belief that, hey, we've done this before. The year that Lonnie Phelps blew up, everyone was asking who's going to rush the passer, and then he did. So then he leaves, and then you ask, well, who's going to replace Lonnie? Who's going to replace Lonnie? And then Austin Booker was even better. So I think there's a quiet confidence among the coaching staff that, okay, we'll find the guy, and we've done this before. But you still have to see it. And as well as anybody in this league, if you can't get after the quarterback and make it hard, it's hard on your defense. So I think, I really like their secondary. Their corners are as good as there is in the Big 12. Their linebackers are certainly a unit on the rise. And then I think their offense is as good as anybody at all 4 positions or 5 positions, however you want to look at it. But, man, that D-line, it has to show up. They have to find a pass rusher. And then they also have to be good against the run. And there's no reason to think they won't be. But yeah, you're looking at questions this time of year, and that remains the biggest one for me anyway.
What was your reaction last week to a couple of the business discussions about the Big 12 naming rights being up for sale to add revenue, and then on top of that, the potential that the Big 12 might look with private equity in their future?
I think my reaction was probably the same as everybody's. You kind of give it an eye roll, and then you shrug your shoulders and say, well, I'd do the same thing. I don't love it. I don't love the all-state 12 conference. I think that sounds ridiculous, but nobody asked me, nor will they. And so, if it makes money and it keeps your conference stable in this landscape, sign me up. I think everybody would understand that. I was actually playing in a golf tournament at the country club last week, and that was, between round 2 and 3, that was kind of as we were sitting there eating breakfast, guys were talking about that, right? Like, what did you hear this all-state news, whatever? And one of the guys I was competing against, he looked down the table at the guy who said that, and he goes, you know what? Who cares? It's all different anyway, so who cares? And if that doesn't sum it up, I think that's perfect. I really do. I mean, gone are the days where you're worried about the history and tradition of these proud conferences and all that. I mean, that's all blown up, right? So who cares what it's called? The only thing I would say is if you're going to change the name and you're going to mix Allstate in there, either get rid of the number or make the number the right number. I think if you're going to change it, do that, right? Like, I think it's hilarious that they're keeping the 12 in there if that ends up happening.
I asked Craig that last week. I said, why would they keep the number? Because you know what? If they went to 16 by 2 years from now, it might be 18 or 14. Who knows?
I think that's the catch. You'd constantly possibly be changing the number given what could still happen. But, yeah, I'm with you, though. It seems sort of silly. But, yeah, maybe just leave it for now or just get rid of it altogether. Hopefully we'll have some clarity on the conference realignment front here sooner rather than later. But as you know, Matt, that's a constant conversation that seemingly has no end in sight.
Always. Absolutely right.
Now, when it comes to recruiting, big weekend for Kansas. There's obviously a lot of momentum. I know one of the kind of catches this year is the whole stadium situation, so they won't have, the home stadium to play, and that'll be certainly a huge difference. But that's also a good thing long-term because that means the stadium's getting upgraded. So recruiting and the preseason expectations and the stadium work, and I'd imagine funding's going well and all those types of things. I don't know. Les Miles is in the headlines today, as I'm sure you've seen, because he's not eligible for the Hall of Fame, and so he's suing LSU. But it just made me think of Kansas and where they were and where they are now. Can you even begin to describe just the excitement level around Kansas football in general compared to what you've seen for so many years?
I could try, but it really is hard, man. I mean, you do have to be here, and I think more importantly, you have to have been here, right? Like, It was so low, and it was so bad, rewind 7-8 years ago, even 5 years ago. People had checked out completely. They looked like they were just on the train to nowhere, and they just kept making the same mistakes with bad hire after bad hire after bad hire. And, and you do that long enough and people are going to check out. And then more important than that, people are going to stop believing that you can even get it fixed. And so, I think to understand how great it is right now, you do have to have that intimate knowledge of what that felt like and what that meant to fans, because they were ready to check out in September most years. I mean, it was incredible. And while that's always been the joke as far as like, well, it's basketball season or when does basketball start? That's always been the joke. Like, it wasn't even just that. It was just like, just please don't make me watch any more football, and so when that's sort of where you came from to being a preseason ranked team, being a team that's talked about as a Big 12 contender, being a team that's even talked about as a playoff team is, that they're over the moon about it. They love Lance. They love these players. It's not quite the fame and glory and all of that you get with basketball. And I think the reason for that is because these guys wear helmets and there's 100 guys on the roster and it's just, they're just not quite as familiar across the board. But make no mistake about it, man, Jaylen Daniels is a superstar here. Devin Neal is a superstar here. Some of these other dudes are a big freaking deal in Lawrence, Kansas. And so, it really is cool to see, the football program, a lot of people in the athletic department, a lot of people who have been through a lot of that stuff deserve this because they grinded their way through all those lean years. But the thing that I've always enjoyed, going back to the Liberty Bowl a couple years ago, and then of course last year winning the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, just this last couple years of the resurgence, the thing that I've always enjoyed most is just watching what it's done to Lawrence. I mean, people are so excited and people care, and you get basketball season and sometimes there's 3 games in a week and it's crappy weather, and while everyone's big and they all matter and they're all exciting, there's nothing quite like that one game a week. On Monday you start talking about it, and then by Wednesday you're making plans for tailgating, and then Thursday you're like, oh, it's 2 days away, and just that build that was totally missing, and that I don't really think you get as much with basketball. It's back, man, and you can't go anywhere without talking about football in this town right now, and the last couple of years it's been the same way. So, I grew up here, and this is home for me, and so to see this town re-energized because of this football success, and to see people excited and really united behind it is really cool, and it's long overdue, and you can't give enough credit to Lance Leipold for doing it. You can't give enough credit to Travis Goff, the AD, for hiring Lance and getting this thing going, and then of course it trickles all the way down through the coaches and the players and the staff and all of those guys. I mean, people have put in a lot of freaking work to make this happen, and now they're reaping the benefits. And as I said at the top of this, I mean, they're excited and they feel great about where they've come, but they're not even close to where they want to be. And that's probably the coolest thing, because you look at it and some of these guys are going to be gone, and they're getting guys drafted now, and so you're losing those guys. But instead of panicking like, well, how are we going to figure that out? You feel like the recruiting's on the same pace and page as the program building. And so there's just this trust that's there now that the fans are like, well, I don't know who they're going to be and I don't know who they're going to get, but Lance will figure it out. And that in and of itself is remarkable. So it's not just this year will be fun and let's see what happens. We're back. That's what people are walking around saying. We're back, and we'll see how long that lasts, and we'll see if that's true. But from the KU fan perspective, that's certainly how they feel.
Matt, one more question on Leipold. We see who he is, basically on occasion when you see an interview with him. He's not one of those that's going to do like the talk show tour, even as popular as people would like to have him on. You see him most of the time. What kind of person is he, and is there a side of him, a softer side of him that most people don't see?
Man, that's a tough question. I don't know if I've ever been asked to go just a straight description of him, but I'll give it my best shot. He's a great dude, first of all. First and foremost, he's a great man. And, I think that is what he leads with. That's what people pick up on right away. He's friendly. He smiles. He'll chat with you. So I think there's an element of people out there that think, well, he's not one of those SOB, tough as nails football coaches. He is. He can be, and he takes it very serious, but he's able to manage and sort of balance the two sides. He can sit down and have a beer with you and have a joke with you and make you laugh like you've never laughed before. At the same time, when it's time to go to work, he'll shut the door and pretend he doesn't know you or anyone else and do his work. And that's how he operates around his team. But the connection with his players is very, very, very strong and real. And, they love him. They love his dry sense of humor. He does crack jokes with them all the time. He's not afraid to push them, but, he pushes them with one hand and then he grabs them back with the other and puts his arm around them. And that's not an easy balance. I mean, there's a lot of football coaches that have one or the other, and it's hard to have both. And I think he does it very well. I know all the, donors and alums and fans that, they love him. And I think at his core, the reason that all of that can work together is because he's a very, very Midwest dude. He grew up in Wisconsin. His wife's from Omaha. They're comfortable here, and they're good people, and they don't believe that they're anything special. I mean, they know what they're doing here is a big deal. But this is what they did at Wisconsin Whitewater. This is what they did at Buffalo, and they're just taking what they did there and bringing it to this level, and it's working the same as it did there. And so for them, yeah, it's a bigger place and it's higher exposure and all that stuff. But for them, life's very much the same. It's just, that maybe you have a few more zeros in your bank account and people know your name a little more than they did. And because you turn this thing around, you're sort of, in favor, and people want to high five you and say hi to you at the grocery store and that kind of stuff. But he loves that stuff. Again, he's a Midwestern guy, and I think he's very comfortable in Lawrence, and I think that's a big part of, you heard his name come up at Washington. You heard his name come up last year at Wisconsin and Nebraska. I mean, KU's done right by him. They were the ones that sort of, quote unquote, took the chance on bringing him to this level. So there was a loyalty there. But, they've also understood that he's damn good at what he does. And that when people come calling, they better make sure that he feels wanted and that he, is compensated the way he wants to be. And they've done a great job, both sides, with managing that. And I mean, I think he's in Lawrence until he's done. I really do. He's found a great fit, and both sides fit. He fits Lawrence, he fits KU, but KU fits him too. And they're on cloud nine right now, man. I mean, the whole department is as good and as healthy as I've seen it, and all these coaches get along, not just within the football staff, but across the department. I mean, Bill Self loves watching football be good. Bill Self loves watching volleyball. Volleyball loves supporting football. On and on and on and on. And KU's got that in a big way right now, better than I've ever seen it, and I've been around a long time.
Matt Tait, thank you very much. Wave the Week covers KU as well as you can. We appreciate your time, Matt. This is 365 Sports. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
You too.